As long as you get it to me before I start grading it.
When are you gonna start writing?
Probably this weekend.
Oh, okay.
Anyone know if Matthew's here today?
He wasn't in choir, so I don't,
He wasn't?
no.
So,
He's not gonna be here.
Okay. Well, let's get started this afternoon. For any of you, is this your last class of the day? Oh, good. So after this class, you can go and maybe enjoy your last weekend of August.
Enjoy.
Though it might be still kind of warm, although it's supposed to be getting cooler. I mean, hopefully no more of this 90 plus stuff. Okay. The first thing I'm going to do is return homework that I have for you graded. So I'll take a minute or two to do that. And then we'll look at the handout that you have for me today. I think the only comment I have regarding the homework I just returned is, for some of you, be careful again about placement of your accidentals. For some of you, they're just a little too low or a little too high, or just not in the right space when the note is in the space, or centered on the line when the note is on the line. So make sure you just put the accidental directly in front of the note that it applies to. Okay? So, moving on, if you haven't already, take out the handout that I gave you for today on major scales, key signatures, that kind of thing. And I'm going to try to head off one potential question by letting you know, I don't know if I was clear about this the last class, but for section 1, when you were looking for errors in those scales, if you had to, in other words, if there was an accidental on a note that was not supposed to be there, and you wanted to delete that accidental, just put a line or slash through it. That would be perfectly fine to tell me that that accidental was not supposed to be there, that you know that it's wrong. Okay. In the opposite case, if there's an accidental missing on a note that should be there, you can just go ahead and write in the accidental in front of that note, just add it in. Okay? So I think those would be the two best ways to show me how you correct those major scales. And I can tell you that in number 1, the E major scale, there was 1 error to correct. In the A flat major scale, there were 2 errors to correct. In the C sharp major scale, there was 1 error to correct again. Okay? Now, let me ask you if any of you have any questions for me before I correct this assignment. Yes?
On like the number 3 short answer, the top 3 were like pretty difficult. I was wondering if we could
So is it like section 2, fill in the blank?
No, section 3, and
Oh.
then the top 3.
Oh, the top 3?
Yeah, like the first 1, 2, and 3 of section 3.
Sure, okay, I think I know what you're saying. All right, if number 1 in that section asks or says F sharp is the 3rd scale degree in what major key? So we're given F sharp, and if F sharp is, we're told, is the 3rd scale degree, I'm going to count backwards through the pitch alphabet to find scale degree 1, because that would be the name of the key. So F is, some type of F is scale degree 3. Did I go over this with you last class?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I know there was one thing I omitted from your class that I ended up talking about in the other class. Oh well. So if some type of F is scale degree 3, that means E is scale degree 2, that means some type of D is scale degree 1. So the answer is going to be some type of D. Which, well, we can rule out D sharp because there's no such thing as D sharp major. So would you say that D major has an F sharp in it or D flat major?
D major.
D major. Yeah, just plain D. In the next one, A sharp is the 7th scale degree. Well, I could count backwards to find scale degree 1, or maybe a little bit shorter method would be to count up to find scale degree 8, because that's the same as scale degree 1. If some sort of A is scale degree 7, that means a B of some sort is scale degree 8. So the answer for that one is going to be some type of B major. And B sharp major is non-existent. Would A sharp be found in B flat major or B major? Just regular B major. Yeah, it'd be a harmonic with the tonic note of the other one. And then finally, E flat is the 6th scale degree in G flat major. Maybe I'll count up to find scale degree 8. If some sort of E is 6, that means some sort of F is 7, that means some sort of G is scale degree 8. G sharp major does not exist, so that's ruled out. G major, does it have E flat in its key signature? No, so the answer must be what type of G major? Flat major, that's right, G flat major. Okay? Yeah, so that takes care of those. Any other questions? I'm sorry, what?
We were all less than
Oh, you were all okay. I was like, any other questions? Okay. Make sure your name and is at the top and I'll come collect it. I'll probably get this back to you on Monday. For some reason, this machine is not on, so I'm going to turn it on. Gives it a little jingle. I don't know why sometimes those air purifiers shut off or go on. I know that white one's on, I can see that without. All right, well, today, we have, I guess I could say I have my work cut out for me today because we are moving away from major scales temporarily, and we're going to start discussing minor scales today. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to be able to forget about major scales, of course. We will be using major scales and information about them in the key signatures from now until probably the end of the 4th semester of theory, if any of you have to go all 4 semesters. But Well, the major scale to me is relatively straightforward. I think of the major scale as a fixed scale. That is, it's got a definite pattern of whole steps and half steps that never changes. You've got your key signatures, which once you memorize them, you know exactly what accidentals go on what notes in the major scale. There's no tricks, there's no exceptions to the rule. What you see is what you get with major scale. In fact, I could say major scales are kind of immutable. That means they do not change. But the reason I say that is because the minor scale, on the other hand, is somewhat thorny because there are 3 different versions of the minor scale. And I don't know if any of you knew that or not, but that's a true statement about minor scales. There's 3 different versions, and they're all just a little bit different from each other to give you a little bit of pitch variety in what we say the minor mode or the minor scale area, minor keys. Okay, so what we need to do today is learn, first of all, what the 3 minor scale versions are. And then we need to know how they differ from the major scale, which is something that we know now. Because if you're learning something brand new and you don't know anything about it, it's usually helpful to compare it to something that is already familiar to you. And that's a good way that you get to become familiar with that which you do not know yet. Okay. So we want to compare the 3 versions of the minor scale to the major scale. But then after that, once we get the 3 versions of the minor scale spelled, we want to look at how the 3 versions differ among each other, differ from each other in just slightly different ways. So, I mean, obviously my goal is to help you understand this as best as I can today. If you leave class today feeling like, well, I don't really completely understand it, that's okay. Because we're going to spend 2 or 3 classes next week also still on minor scales. It takes a little while to get these to sink in. And then next week we'll actually get into minor key signatures, which again will help make more sense of them and hopefully speed the writing and spelling of those skills up. Okay. But right now we're not going to talk about key signatures. We're just going to talk about what the 3 versions of the minor scale are and how they differ from the major scale and then how they differ from each other. Okay. Now, does anyone know one of the versions of the minor scale, the name of one? Yeah, go ahead.
Melodic.
Okay, melodic minor. That's the last one that I'll list down here. And how about another one? Natural minor. That's right. That's the one I like to think of as the first one. Not that they're really in any order. And what about the third one? You know? Yeah, harmonic minor. That's exactly right. So these are their names. At least they have different or unique names so that we can tell them apart. At least to that degree, or that far. Okay, the natural minor scale, the harmonic minor scale, and the melodic minor scale. The nice thing about these, one of the nice things, easy to remember about all 3 of these minor scales is that their first 5 notes are identical. Okay, the first 5 notes of all 3 versions of this minor scale are the same. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by, I think what I'm going to do is start by writing up a C major scale here, and a major scale here, and a major scale here. And then I'm going to adjust each of these major scales slightly so that they become natural minor, and harmonic minor, and melodic minor. Okay? So, and I guess I'll do this in the treble clef. So I'm going to start with a major C major scale. We know that that has no flats and no sharps. And what the heck, I'll give them their scale degree numbers here. So it's hopefully clear what I'm talking about and referring to as I discuss. And then let's do another C major scale. See if I can line these up relatively close. And by the way, it'll be good to have this in your notes when I'm eventually done creating all the versions of the minor scale. If you don't care to write it or notate it in your notes, maybe you can, when we're done, I'll give you a chance, maybe you can take a picture of the board with your phone or something like that. Whatever works best for you. So here's another C major scale. Okay. Now, eventually I want to change all of these C major scales. I'll change this one to a natural minor scale. I'm going to change this one to show you how you get a harmonic minor scale spelled right. And I'll change this one to show you how to get a melodic minor scale spelled right. And one thing I just got through saying is that all three versions of these minor scales, their first 5 notes are identical. Well, how do the first 5 notes of all these scales differ from a major scale? The only difference between the first 5 notes of any minor scale and a major scale is this. Scale degree 3 is lowered a half step. And there's nothing more noticeable to my ear, in my opinion, there's nothing more noticeable and more important about distinguishing between the sound of a major scale and key, between that and a minor scale and key, than the third scale degree. That makes all the difference. Just by lowering that scale degree 1/2 step, the mood, or the tone, so to speak, of the key changes completely. Changes completely. See if I can illustrate to you what I mean. Let me play the first 5 notes of a major scale. We've heard major a lot. But now look what happens when all I do is lower scale degree 3 just by a half step and change nothing else. Isn't that a completely different sound and mood? Yeah. You can think of major as, bright, maybe you're happy or something, and you can think of minor as a little more sad or melancholy. Sound. And that's just because I altered scale degree 3 1/2 step. I lowered it. Makes a world of difference. Okay? So at least, I'm not finished with these scales yet, but at least the first 5 notes of all 3 versions of these minor scales, they are correct right now. And they are identical. There's no difference among the first 5 notes of any of these minor scales. All right, so let's finish spelling these scales. And we're going to find out that the 3 forms of the minor scale, they differ only from each other with respect to scale degrees 6 and 7. The only difference is when you compare among all 3 of these with each other, that is, the only differences among these 3 scales is they have slightly different versions of scale degrees 6 and 7. And that's what makes each of the 3 versions unique. Okay? So 6 and 7 is scale degrees, this is where the action is, so to speak. And let me go ahead and first of all spell the natural minor scale correctly. And I'll do it by comparing it to the major scale, because we've got to compare it to something we know. And I'll probably, you know what, I'm going to even do this. I'm going to change the color of the notes that I lowered from the major scale. So for instance, I've already lowered scale degree 3 from C major a half step, right? Well, to finish the natural minor scale, I have to lower scale degrees 6 and 7 from the major scale a half step. And now this is a correctly notated natural minor scale, starting on C. So one thing we can say, which is a true statement, is that a natural minor scale is basically a major scale, but with scale degrees 3, 6, and 7 lowered a half step. That's a true statement. It's a major scale with scale degrees 3, 6, and 7 lowered a half step. And whenever I use the term lowered in my discussion here, it always refers to just a half step. Just a half step. Before I lowered these scale degrees, these blue ones here, they were all natural. You can think of them as, the ones that have been lowered here, you can think of them as, they're known as the minor third scale degree, the minor sixth, and the minor seventh scale degree. As opposed to the major sixth and the major seventh scale degree, which are found in the major scale, right? Okay. So we're going to distinguish between something known as the minor sixth and minor seventh scale degree versus the major sixth and the major seventh scale degree. These are, the minor ones are found in the natural minor scale, and the major ones you'll find are kind of sprinkled about, I guess, in other versions of the minor scale. So let's go to the harmonic minor. How does a harmonic minor how does it compare to a major scale again? Which is what, oops, I don't have a major anymore, I already lowered this. Well, a major scale, obviously you have to lower scale degree 3, always. But the only other note from a major scale you have to lower to get a harmonic minor scale is scale degree 6. And that is a correctly spelled harmonic minor scale starting on the pitch C. The harmonic minor scale is kind of weird or strange because, look, it uses the minor 6th scale degree, but it also uses the major 7th scale degree. And I'll play all of these in a little bit, but let me play the harmonic minor scale right now so you can hear how it sounds. You hear that wide, kind of a wide space between scale degree 6 and 7? Kind of interesting about the harmonic version. It's got a nice color to it. Finally, this is where it gets the thorniest. Unfortunately, there are two different forms of the melodic minor scale. There are two different forms of the melodic minor scale. There is an ascending form. So when the scale goes up, it uses a certain set of notes. And when the scale goes down, it uses a slightly different set of notes. But the changes in the note set are only in scale degrees 6 and 7. That's only where the differences are. All right, so to get an ascending melodic minor scale from a major scale, all you do is lower scale degree 3, which is what I already did. That's it. You don't have to touch scale degree 6 and 7. You leave them as the major 6th and the major 7th scale degree. And that is an ascending, a correctly spelled ascending melodic minor scale on C. Now, I don't have enough space left on my staff here, but I can at least give you an idea of how this is going to go. On the way down, the melodic minor scale uses the lowered 6th and 7th scale degrees, or the minor 6th and 7th scale degrees. Okay, and then everything else is identical to the side of the minor scale. Okay. So, once more with the melodic minor scale, when it ascends, we use the major 6th and 7th scale degrees. When it descends, these get lowered a half step, and therefore they are the minor 6th and 7th scale degrees on the way down. And there you have all the bountiful, wonderful variety of the 3 versions of the minor scale, one version of which has 2 forms. So let me go ahead and play the natural minor scale. You can hear how that one sounds. And I already played the harmonic minor scale, right? Let's listen to a complete melodic minor scale. Going up using major 6 and 7 scale degrees, but then coming right back down but using minor 6 and 7 scale degrees. Difference in scale degrees 6 and 7 going up versus coming down. That's kind of the idea. And yes,
Okay, well, why?
well, it's part of it is because that's the way it's been for centuries. This is what we call tonal music, and this is the style that developed in the late 1600s in the West, so to speak, kind of like in Europe. I think another reason for this is that just think of how much more pitch, color, and variety you have when you write a piece in minor versus in major. Because in major, you only really have, 7 different pitches to work with. But in minor, you have so much more variety, and your pitch palette becomes so much greater. And you can get different sounds, different nuances with these slight variations in pitch. So I think that's a big part of it. By the way, when composers compose something in a minor key, they're not restricted to just using one of the 3 forms of the minor scale for the whole piece. They can fluctuate and they can move in and out between and use elements of all 3 versions of the minor scale as needed, and according to some traditional rules and things like that, to maximize, again, the rich variety of color that the pitches offer. So I think that's a big part of it. And again, I didn't make this up. I'm not making this up now. Like I said, it's been this way for since at least before 1700. So that's how long? That's over 300 years ago now. I mean, it wasn't always this way. Back in the Middle Ages, they didn't use major and minor scales. They had other scales. But we'll learn those in Theory 4. Right now, it's just our main task to really get down major scales and then the 3 versions of the minor scale. Because that's what all of what they say common practice tonal music was composed in. We're talking about between, the late 1600s all the way up to 1900, close to 1900, yeah. So that's a big block of time where these scales were the basis, or the source material of all of what composers used to write the music. Okay, good. Any other questions before I go on? All right, so let's take a stock and a look at some of these minor scales again. First of all, I'm going to review how they differ from the major scale, which again is what we know now. And then we're going to look at some slight nuances on how they differ among each other. Okay? So, if I asked you, or take a C major scale. Let's pretend you have a C major scale. What would you do to it to alter it to make it a C natural minor scale? Who can tell me what you would do to it?
Lower third, 6 and 7.
That's right. You take any major scale and you lower scale degrees 3, 6, and 7 a half step, and bam, you've got the natural minor scale version. So let's say, I had an A flat major scale. How would you turn it into an A flat natural minor scale? It's not a trick question. That's right. You lower scale degrees 3, 6, and 7 from what they are major, lower them a half step, and you'll get the natural minor. Okay. What about harmonic minor scale? Let's say I have an F major scale to start with. What would I do to an F major scale to get the right spelling of an F harmonic minor scale?
Lower the 3rd and 6th.
Right? Lower scale degrees 3 and 6 only. And then you get it correctly spelled harmonic minor scale. Finally, let's say we have a G ascending melodic minor scale. What one note would I have to change or lower from a G major scale to get G ascending melodic minor? Scale degree 3. You always, if you have the first, whatever scale degree 3 is in a major key, you lower it by a half step and it makes it minor sound. Scale degree 3 is a real critical One other thing I need to say, maybe some of you have observed it or know it already. I didn't get a chance to say it, but did you know that the descending version of melodic minor is identical to the natural minors? So how do I, let's see. I'll put that the descending melodic minor is same notes as natural minor. Right? Because if we use minor seventh and minor sixth scale degrees, which is what the natural minor uses, and we end up using the minor third scale degree, of course, which is also in that scale, it's the exact same. So we can say that the descending version of the melodic minor scale is identical to the natural minor scale. Okay, now, yes, go ahead.
If you're notating this, would you ever end up using double flats? Like C flat major, taking that and making it minor?
Okay, the answer to that question is, if you were spelling a C flat minor scale, yes. But the answer to that question is also, there is no such scale in our traditional understanding as C flat minor.
Alright.
Yep, that's good. All right, so let's take a look at the differences among just these three. What's the only difference between the natural minor and the harmonic minor scale? Scale degree 7, right? The harmonic minor scale uses the major 7th scale degree, the natural minor scale uses the minor 7th scale degree. So really, everything is identical except scale degree 7, and they only differ by a half step. And yet it makes such a unique, interesting sound. What is the difference between the harmonic minor scale and the ascending version of the melodic minor scale? The 6th scale degree, right? The ascending version uses both the 6 and 7 are the major scale degrees, whereas here, only the 7th is the major scale degree. It uses one minor 6th. And here, both of the 6th and 7th scale degrees are minor. So you see it's got a little bit of, it's kind of covering all the bases. They're just slight variants of each other. What would be interesting is, the only scale we don't have up here is one that uses the major 6th scale degree, but the minor 7th. Well, that actually turns out to be, well, it depends on what this is, but it turns out to be more like Mixolydian. That's another scale, again, that we'll wait to learn until we get to Theory 4. So don't bother with that. Don't worry about that. Okay, so now we should have ways to spell the three versions of the minor scale starting on any pitch. And my suggestion, my recommendation and approach for this is start with spelling a major scale on that pitch, whatever it is, and then make the necessary adjustments to convert it to either natural minor, harmonic minor, or melodic minor. I'm not going to have you be counting whole steps and half steps in minor scales. And part of the reason is because since there's three versions, you'd have to remember many different whole step, half step patterns. We're just going to compare these scales to the major scale for now until next week when we finally get to minor key signatures. Then we don't have to do really any more comparison. We can just use the key signature to get the right accidentals on the right notes. All right, so now we have to start going through some examples. Let me make some space for this. Oh, this is the time you're supposed to either, it's all complete now if you want to take a picture or you want to finish your notes before I erase it. Otherwise, this same information is found on page 11 in your textbook. Okay, everyone had enough time? So let's say on a homework assignment, you were asked to spell we'll put it in treble clef. Spell a B natural minor scale. I am recommending and suggesting for now, until we get to minor key signature, for now, start with spelling a major scale on the same note. So let's first of all generate a B major scale. And this is where I'm going to enlist your help. What is B major?
Sharp.
5 sharps, right? So let's make it major first by putting in those 5 sharps. So it's F sharp, and C sharp, and G sharp, and D sharp, and finally A sharp. So I have B major so far. That's not my final answer, of course. So we just got done through talking. Now what 3 pitches do I have to lower a half step to get a B natural minor scale from this?
3, 6, and 7.
3, 6, and 7, right? Okay, so remember, we're lowering them only a half step. So if I take scale degree 3, which is now D sharp, and I lower it a half step, that means it's just going to become D natural, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, and then if I find scale degree 6, which is now a G sharp, and I lower it a half step, it becomes G natural. And the same thing with scale degree 7. It is A sharp, so I lower it a half step, and now it becomes A natural. And apparently, because I've done the procedure and steps correctly, that is a correctly spelled B natural minor scale. And if I were to play it, incidentally, we're going to find out next week that the key signature for a B minor scale is 2 sharps. I wonder where that comes from. Okay, so, any questions about how to do that? All right, let's do some more. On the next step down, I'm going to have us spell a minor scale on F. Let's also do this in the treble clef. How about F harmonic minor? And so I'm going to get F major up here first. What would I need to make an F major? B flat. All right. Now, we're going from a major scale to make it harmonic minor. There are 2 scale degrees I need to lower a half step. The 3rd and the 6th. That's right. Okay? So right now the 3rd scale degree is A natural. If you lower it a half step, it becomes A flat. And right now the 6th scale degree is D. Lower it a half step, it will become D flat. And that is a correctly spelled F harmonic minor scale. Sorry about this out. I really like the sound of the harmonic minor. I don't know why, you got the minor 6th scale degree, but then you jump way up to the major 7th, like, it's right there almost to the top. Let's do a couple melodic minor scale examples. I'm going to make, since I don't care to write down so low here, it's kind of hard to do that, I'm just going to erase this to make some more space. At my 11 o'clock section, I had a student that asked me, you're ever going to find any spellings of any minor scales that contain both flats and sharps? Is that possible? Well, the answer is yes. You can have a minor scale that contains both flats and sharps, or at least one flat and one sharp. Let's try this scale. We'll do it in bass clef, and we'll do melodic minor. How about G harmonic minor? All right, I don't know what's going on with my brain today. Let's just start with the ascending form of the melodic minor scale first. By the way, whenever you have homework or quizzes or tests that ask you to spell a melodic minor scale, your final answer is going to have to be both ascending scale and a descending scale, because it's different. But when I ever ask you to spell a harmonic or a natural minor scale, you only have to write one up. Well, let's just start with the ascending version first. And even before that, I'm going to start with G major. What do I need to add to this scale to make it a G major scale? 1 sharp, F sharp, right? Okay, so this is G major currently. What do I do to get a major scale turned into ascending melodic minor? Lower the which one? The third. That's it. Just lower the third scale degree half step. Boom. Take a look at that scale. It's got a flat and a sharp in it. Sacrilege. No, is that legal? Sure it's legal, yeah. You just won't find that in major scales. Major scales are either, sharp. Well, let's see if here's the ascending version of that one. Sounds what? Crusty. That's a good scale.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Maybe a little rusty.
Dusty, crusty, dusty.
All right, now let's we got to get the descending version written out here. So I'm going to fill in all the bubbles yet. And I know, for instance, that because that third scale degree is B flat, then this one also has to be B flat. It's only scale degrees 6 and 7 that are different between the ascending and descending version. All right, so now you tell me, if scale degree 7 on the way up is F sharp, what kind of F do I need on the way down? F natural. And technically, this is F natural. I don't have to put an accidental on here. But I would like to ask you, whenever you spell melodic minor scales on the way down, even if you don't require an accidental, I want you to put accidentals on scale degree 6 and 7 to show me ultra clearly that you're lowering those pitches, those two pitches. All right, now, on the way up, scale degree 6 is E natural, so what does scale degree 6 need to be on the way down? E flat. This one does require an accidental. But I'd like you to put accidentals on scale degree 6 and 7 on the way down regardless, whether it's naturals or what have you, just to show me that you're physically lowering those by half step. And now I'm done. I have a completely correctly spelled G melodic minor scale. So totally on the way up and the way down. That sounds what? I wish I could say I wrote it, but I didn't. That's something Bach wrote in the key of G minor. Yeah, it's a fugue, exactly. All right, shall we do one more scale? One more melodic minor scale, and then I'll tell you what you need to do for homework.
Yes.
Let's stay in the bass clef, and let's go to A melodic minor. By the way, a little heads up for next week. In your reading, you're going to find out that whenever the author refers to major scales or major keys, the author uses capital letters for the tonic or first pitch. But when the author refers to minor scales and minor keys, he uses lowercase letters to designate those. Okay, and I tend to try to follow suit. I try to get in the habit of, writing things like this. I write G major, but I write something like this, G minor. Right? Yeah. That's a little more for next week, but that's kind of the process. Anyways, let's just start with the first half, the ascending part of A melodic minor. I'm going to start with A major. What do I need to make A major? Yeah, 3 sharps. F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. Okay. What's the one lowering I need to make to turn major into ascending melodic minor? Just lower the third. Okay. Now the first half is correct. We've got A ascending melodic minor. Okay, let's make the descending half correct. Do I need to put anything on scale degree 3? No, apparently not, because it doesn't require anything over here, and they're always identical. But, just to be ultra clear, I want us to put some markings, some accidentals on these. So if scale degree 7 is G sharp on the way up, what should it be on the way down? G natural, okay? So even though you might not need a natural, I would like to see it from you. And then if scale degree 6 is F sharp on the way up, what should it be on the way down? F natural. And that is a correctly spelled A melodic minor scale. Questions? Yes.
So since you're able to have both flat and sharps in a minor scale, are there any key signatures that are like that?
No, there are no key signatures like that. And you'll find out, hopefully, why next week.
Makes my life so much easier.
Yeah. Okay, now I want to make one little change to your assignment sheet for Monday. Your assignment for Monday is to do just the top section, section A on page 5 in the workbook. So then that's the spelling minor scales. But there are 2 minor scales that the author puts in, even on day 1 for some reason, that are really tough, because one of the scales he asks you to spell is A sharp minor. Is there even an A sharp major to start out with or compare it to? No. So we won't be able to do that one until we learn key signatures. And then the author also asks you to spell a D sharp melodic minor scale. Is there a D sharp major scale to compare it to? No, there's not on the circular scale. No. So I still want you to do section A, but I want you to skip A sharp minor and D sharp minor. Do all the other ones in the top section. Just omit or ignore A sharp natural minor and D sharp melodic minor. Does that make sense? So you really only have like 5 minor scales to spell. They're really not numbered. It's just section A, and you'll be able to tell by the name of the scale. Yeah. A sharp and D sharp you can skip. Okay, that's all I have for you guys today. Have a great weekend.
A sharp and D sharp.
Like the section on the same page, identifying base natural. So this for that.
I was asking for clarification.
Oh, yeah, for now, I think we're setting up natural.
Okay, I'm still good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you don't need to do D, and for this section,
Thank you.
What page was
Page 5.